All right, we are now broadcasting to all attendees, and it looks like it's still the 4 of us at the moment, but maybe other people are.
Look at the number going up and up and up. You're not going to see them.
Oh, okay. This is my first time using the webinar, so I'm used to seeing Brady Bunch style. Lots of folks.
Look at the numbers going up on the bottom.
Okay, wonderful. Great, great. We've got more than 30 people with us now. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Right on time. I wore my bright yellow shirt today, trying to be positive and uplifting. So I'm wearing a lot of dark colors lately. All right, we've got 47 folks so far. We'll give it another minute or two and let people join us. Okay, hopefully all of our internet connections stay viable for the next hour or so. I see some clouds rolling in, and hopefully it won't be as bad as last week. We had a webinar and we had those sustained winds that were about 90 miles per hour. And so we lost a lot of people because it was very clear that internet went out as soon as they started to drop off. We lost one of our presenters. And it kind of, it was a little disastrous, but we kept charging forward. I'm gonna give it just one more minute. Okay, I've got 12:02, so we might as well get started. My name is Jennifer Coffey. I'm the Executive Director of ANJEC, and I want to thank everybody for being here today. We're up to 56 attendees right now, and I'm sure we'll have more folks, 57, more folks come in. ANJEC is, as most of you know, really the resource organization for environmental commissions. And as I'm sure everybody on this call is at least somewhat familiar, environmental commissioners are really, they are workhorses in their community. And I just want to thank you for everything that you do. You are a collaborator, a coordinator, an advocate, a steward for the environmental resources in your town. You look locally, but you think globally. You are enacting solutions to climate change on the local level that have multiple benefits to resolve flooding, beautify your community, help pollinators. And so I just want to thank you so much for all of the work that you do. And you've been doing it for so long. ANJEC, as your resource organization and your support arm, has been around for 51 years now. So we celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. And we are completely operational. We are also completely virtual. And we are committed to continuing to hold all of our public programs for you virtually through at least the end of the year, likely even more so into the new year. Out of, number one, an abundance of caution and safety and wanting everybody to stay as healthy as they possibly can. And also because we are getting phenomenal attendance and engagement from environmental commissions around the state. And we've seen that as we've all come up to speed with technology, it's really provided a platform for you to come together and share your successes, your struggles, your challenges with other environmental commissioners. And so we want to make sure that we have ample opportunity today for you to do that as well. This is a lunch and learn, so we're going to try to hold this to about an hour. I want to introduce also Sophie Glovier, who is the chair of the Princeton Environmental Commission and also works with the Watershed Institute. So, hi, Sophie. And Dan Bachalis. Dan, are you the chair of Hammonton's Environmental Commission? Dan's on mute, so he's nodding. Yes, we think we'll make him the honorary chair at least for today.
I am the chair of the Environmental Commission. Yes.
Dan is the chair of Hammonton's Environmental Commission and also was on the town council. And so he's going to talk to us a little bit about their engagement in Hammonton and building relationships with their community and their officials. Sophie and Dan have really done a phenomenal job at keeping their environmental commissions forward moving and working on issues that are important to their community during this extraordinary time where we're undergoing not only a pandemic, but a social revolution. And so we know that there are lots of priorities right now in terms of health and justice, and we know and support those initiatives. And we also know that the environmental challenges and crises that we face, from climate change and clean air and open space access and plastic pollution, will continue unless we do something. And so that's our focus, is to really work on supporting ECs to keep going and keep fighting the fight. So with that, and with 68 participants now, I'm going to share my screen and give a very brief PowerPoint, and then we'll turn it over, and then we'll do a few Q&As. This is my first time using Zoom webinar rather than a Zoom chat. And there are a couple of new functions here. If you haven't used a Zoom webinar before, there is a Q&A function, but there's also a chat function. We have found that the chat function really works better. So if you have any questions while I'm speaking, please feel free to jot them down in the chat box. Liz Ritter, ANJEC's Deputy Director, is at the office answering phones, helping people connect to Zoom right now. And we'll also be monitoring the chat. And so after I speak, we'll do short Q&A, then we'll turn it over to Sophie and we'll do a short Q&A, and then we'll turn it over to Dan, Q&A, and then we'll have a little bit of time for discussion afterwards. So with that, I am going to work on sharing my screen here. And I'm getting pretty good at this. Okay, and let me go full presentation style. Okay, can you see that, Sophie and Dan? Can you nod if you, all right, awesome, very good. Feedback is one of the most difficult things in presenting virtually. So at ANJEC, I realize it's been 3 months since most of us have gone into pandemic mode. And that was a bit of a shocker for me the other day when I did the math on it. And we know that a lot of environmental commission meetings were canceled in March and also in April. One of the things that we want to, I see somebody posting in the Q&A, if we could just be reminded to let's use the chat instead of the Q&A, we'll catch that one, but let's use the chat function instead. But thank you for your question. So we know EC meetings were canceled in the very beginning when the pandemic, when we really started to go into a lockdown, stay-at-home quarantine position because of the pandemic. And we heard that some environmental commissions are working really well, and that's why we have Sophie and Dan here from Princeton and Hammonton, and others are really struggling. And we wanted to provide some kind of advice and resource support to you in order to make sure that environmental commissions and committees are able to continue to do their best work and to operate during these times. We don't know how long this is going to last. And that's one of the hardest things about being in a pandemic that I'm learning about is that we just don't know how, we can't plan for it. So we are planning for going virtual, as I said, at least till the end of the year. And I think that's probably sound advice for most environmental commissions. I want to just set the stage or the context and say we all know what the environmental problems are in New Jersey. This is the point in time where I ask people to raise their hands, but I can't see everybody. Who's ever been stuck in a flood in New Jersey? Who's ever had their home flooded? Who's ever had a business? Oh, I see virtual hands. Hey, that's awesome. Not awesome you've been stuck in a flood, but awesome that we're participating. We know we've got too much water. We have tremendous flooding problems in New Jersey, except for when we don't have enough water, right? So we understand that we've got this dichotomy of having floods, and they are not just from the Hurricane Irenes that this picture is from. And I used to say this is probably the least amount of traffic that you'll ever see on Route 1. but I think the past 3 months have shown us that we've near matched this situation in terms of least amount of traffic. But we get flooding from 2-year storms, 5-year storms, 10-year storms, which seems to happen multiple times a year now in New Jersey. So we've got too much water, except for when we don't have enough of it. We've got experience with drought in New Jersey. We've had drought watch and drought warnings in 2015, 2016, 2017. We got pretty close this spring again to some drought watches because we did not get a lot of snow. In fact, I don't think we got any snow in central Jersey, more than a fair dusting to cover our cars for about 10 minutes. So that lack of precipitation really led to a pretty dry spring, and those of us who watched water levels were on edge. So too much water, except for when we don't have enough, and a lot of it's too dirty. But you know this, you work on this, you advocate for protections of water quality and our lands. You also advocate for taking action on the climate crisis. I have seen you, I have witnessed you advocating for less development in our floodplains, for reducing greenhouse gases, for rejoining RGGI, for advocating for renewable energy sources. And so you, ECs across the state of New Jersey, have done and will continue to do hard things. You are well set up, you are educated, you are energized, you are mobilized, you are connected to do hard things. We are now asking you to do hard things with layers of additional obstacles in your way, the pandemic and a revolution. But you will continue to take action, I know you will. When we can all be together again, we will see opportunities to install porous pavement, to plant rain gardens, to help our pollinators, to reduce community flooding. You will continue to work on plastic. We know many of you have reached out to us about the plastic pollution crisis, and you've heard me talk before about plastic. And the single most motivating data point for me is that the World Economic Forum has said that by 2050, if we don't do something, that's 2050, that's when my now 11-year-old niece will be my age, we will have more fish than plastic. We will have more plastic than fish, sorry, in our oceans. And I know that that's not a world with more plastic than fish that you want to give to the next generation. So you took action. And we know that there have been challenges during the pandemic with fear-mongering about using reusable bags. And there has been some subsidence of the effectiveness of ordinances. But we've also seen many towns stand up and say, no, we're not going to use bad science. We're going to continue to use our reusable bags. We've had 5 new municipalities since we went into pandemic lockdown pass plastic bag ordinances to ban the use of plastic bags. So you're out there, you're doing it. We know you had plans this year. We had plans too. We have a strategic plan. We have an annual plan. We had a budget. We had goals for ECs. Yeah, we're on to Plan C at this point in time. And so here we are. Thank you for joining us in Plan C virtually from your living rooms, your offices, your basements, your decks, wherever you happen to be right now. And so one of the things that I and we at ANJEC find most useful in our 50 years experience of doing this kind of work is that when you are challenged and things seem to be falling apart a little bit at the seams, at least in terms of how you were planning to do things, you've got to go back to the basics. So let's talk about where we are right now. So we'll do a situational assessment. And when I was putting this together, I was reminded of, I was on the boardwalk one day a couple years ago. My sister came in to visit from overseas, and I was determined to go get my favorite fudge on the boardwalk. And it was probably 95 degrees, and here I am dragging her down the boardwalk to go to the fudge shop that I loved as a child. And she just stopped, weary in heat, and said, "Is this where we are?" In front of the first fudge shop that we saw. And I turned to her and I said, "Yes, this is where we are, but it's not where we're going. And so keep trudging with me down the boardwalk and we'll get there." So I'm asking you to keep trudging with me. where we are is Governor Murphy established, as you know, a stay-at-home order in March. That has technically been lifted now, but he has advised us, as many health professionals have, to not go too fast, to try to go slow for health and safety reasons. I imagine, for what it's worth, in my imagining, that the technical state of emergency that we're in New Jersey will remain for quite some time. So the stay-at-home order was a separate executive order than the state of emergency. And I say that because the New Jersey legislature adopted a law, and it's here for you, it's A 3850 S2294, that allows for virtual or teleconference municipal meetings to happen during a state of emergency. Once the state of emergency goes away, municipalities have to start meeting in person again, unless there's another law enacted. So I imagine that state of emergency will stay in effect for some time. If you are an environmental commission or an environmental committee that is established by ordinance, and most of you are, then you are a municipal body and have a right under this law to meet. So I know we've heard from some of you and you've said, my municipality has told me that we're not essential, so we can't meet. Governor Murphy has been very clear in saying municipalities cannot adopt ordinances or local laws that conflict with his directions on the pandemic. So our position is that you are a governing body established by ordinance and you have the right under A 3850 S2294 to meet. So we will be distributing don't feel like you have to write this down super fast. We will be distributing a resource paper to all of you who are here today that has this information in it. So, you know, feel free to kick back and just enjoy the show here, and we'll get this information to you. There's also a link here, and it's in our guidance document from the DCA, the Department of Community Affairs, that clarifies the guidance on virtual meetings. So that said, back to basics. So when you're in a pinch and you're feeling stressed out, one of the things that I and ANJEC have found beneficial is to go back to basics. The fundamentals of healthy eating, the fundamentals of functional workouts, the fundamentals of anything that you're doing are the most important, the basics. So number one, ECs need to get back into the habit of meeting. Many of them are, many of you are, and we really appreciate that. Those of you who are not, this is meant to be support and inspiration to get the meeting started. Virtual meeting tips. I'm not going to say too much about that because Sophie is going to give us some tips on what she has found to work really well as they're meeting virtually. But we do recommend, ANJEC's recommending that you keep a regular meeting schedule. The easiest thing to do is to look back at that schedule that ideally was noticed in January and had your meetings established for the rest of the year, and stick to those dates and times. They're already published, they're already noticed in the paper of record, and they should be on everyone's calendars. And so go ahead and keep with those. I'm not a huge fan of moving meetings to the middle of the day, but do what works for your community if you feel that it would work better to move the time. In Hammonton, for example, I also serve on our planning board, and we have moved meetings to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's really challenging for me because I have a full-time job and I've got a lot of other meetings happening. So it requires me to kind of shift my work duties around to meet my volunteer duties. So I would suggest trying to stick with the schedule you've already laid out. So let me go back here. How do you do that? Well, Zoom is a great option, and I think Sophie and Dan will talk to us about that. There are other options. Ideally, you would work with your governing body and your municipal attorney, and you could use the same platform that they're using. It's easiest for the public. If the public is used to going to go-to meetings for a municipal meeting, or Zoom, or Google Chat, or Microsoft, use the same platform and allow them to have some consistency. You should always inform your municipal attorney that you have intentions of holding a meeting, when that meeting will be, what time, and on what platform you will be using. So if the municipality, for some reason, and we've heard this from some of you, won't let you use the forum that they're using for their governing body meetings, their planning board meetings, their zoning board meetings, then you may need to go out of the box and use something on your own. So if somebody has an account that they're willing to let you use, great. If not, Zoom has 40-minute sessions for free. That's a tight meeting, but it's going to require you to do some planning and keep the meeting flowing. You can have a Zoom meeting for 40 minutes for free. And I know Dan's got some tips on this he's going to share with us later. So in addition to the basics of having your meetings, because that provides some regularity and some opportunity for the community to touch base with you, for governing body to come in, for ANJEC to offer resources and support, for other watershed groups to come in and join you. It's more important now than it ever has been, that in addition to your basic meetings, that you build and maintain relationships with your officials and with your community. With your officials, because you don't want to surprise them. They have enough surprises on their hands right now, from facing a pandemic and keeping communities safe during a social revolution. So be proactive, communicate with your governing body, tell them what's on the horizon, let them know what you'd like to do. Ask them to prioritize budget items that are essential or important to the natural resources in your community. But most of all, check in with them, let them know you're there, let them know you're all on the same team, you're all working for the community. I know that you may often have different perspectives, but it's really important to make sure that you have those fundamentals of the relationship. One of the things I talk about when we do this in person, when we have our fundamentals course, is that if the only time an environmental commission comes to a governing body is to tell the governing body what they're doing wrong, imagine how well that relationship's going to be. Can you imagine in your personal life if the only time you interacted with your personal partner is to tell them what they were doing wrong? It's not a positive relationship. It's not a healthy relationship. So build that, work on it, be proactive. Community presence, same thing. You've got to let your community know that you're there, you're active. You can find new ways to engage with the public. ANJEC has a series of options in our resource guide that we're going to share with you. You can hold movie nights. And so there are different ways to secure the rights to movies and to share them from your own home computer. And you can invite in a local expert from an environmental group to have a Q&A with you. And so there are lots of movies on plastics and fracking and open space and environmental justice. And if you need suggestions, we can give those to you. Many organizations, such as ANJEC, are experimenting with having our own movie nights. So feel free to share those invitations and invite people in your community to attend, and the EC can be a co-host. Have virtual presentations, reach out to professors, to naturalists, to others who you know are passionate about the environment in your community and in New Jersey, and ask them if they do a virtual presentation and do a Zoom and have a PowerPoint and some Q&A. Stay engaged, be relevant. Cleanups. There's some ECs who are designating areas in their town that need to be cleaned up and asking for representatives to go and do that cleanup, and they are calling them virtual cleanups. And so you will have a family who already live in the same household will go out and adopt a spot and do a cleanup there, so that you're not gathering together 15, 20, or 30 people and exasperating any risks or concerns that maybe your local governing body may have, even though Governor Murphy has said that we now can have gatherings of, I don't want to give the number because I don't want to give you the wrong number, but he's increasing the number of people that we can have in a gathering outside. But to allay any local concerns, you can do a virtual cleanup as well. And we can share the examples of communities that are doing that. In summary, we're all figuring this out together. Nobody has the answers. We will continue to make progress as long as we continue to try. We're seeing progress. As I said, we've had 5 municipalities adopt new plastic ordinances. We've had municipalities reach out about renewable energy and electric vehicles. We will turn this corner eventually and be out of this pandemic, but along the way, I know because I've seen progress that can happen at the local level. And because I'm a Star Wars geek, proudly, and this is the environmental quote about action and motivation. You can do this. I know you can do this. We are here with 50 years experience with 13 staff members to support you. We are fully functional virtually. Reach out to us. The best option is to reach out at info@anjec.org. So that's our general email. If you have staff members that you're working with particularly, feel free to continue to reach out to them. Otherwise, we'll field your questions through this info. And we will continue to hold these workshops and webinars. We're thinking we'll do something like this on about a monthly basis so that we can continue to share stories as we move on. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask Liz if she could tell me.
I got some questions for you to answer.
Okay, great.
If you don't mind.
Sure.
Priya has said that they've been meeting since April virtually, but they really need some help with sort of planning and getting some projects going. And I've told her, as I may have told some other people, to please reach out to ANJEC after this presentation. Jen may have given you plenty of ideas, and you might hear some more good ideas from Dan and Sophie that you can maybe replicate in your town. And we will happily share with you other things as we hear about them. And as Jen mentioned, we'll probably do this similar presentation again soon. There was a lot of interest. So thank you, Priya. Janine had asked Jen, she said her township committee has told us that they can only have application reviews on the meeting agenda.
You can only have you can only have application reviews on the meeting agenda. So they're limiting what they want you to have on your agenda?
Because they've told her that their liaison said their meetings are emergency meetings only, so they can't sort of, I guess, take on new business.
Yeah, I would challenge that and push back and say that there are, I'm going to go back and look at Governor Murphy's executive order and reread that law again, but I do not believe that that's true. Let me go back and look. If you can email us so we can.
Okay, Janine, we'll get back to you on that.
We can get back to you.
Everybody too.
That doesn't sound quite right to me. That was in the beginning, municipalities were limiting to emergency only, but I do believe, and I see a comment here, that committees and governing bodies are talking about more than just emergency at this point in time. Correct. So I would look at your local committee meeting and see what they're doing, but I'm going to reread that ordinance or reread that law and just double check for you. So if you can give us an email, we'll get back to you.
Yep. Liddy had asked which municipalities have introduced plastic ordinances recently.
Oh, I'm going to have to look that up. It's been a little while. I've got 125 of them in my brain. Let me, I'm going to get back to you on that one again. Sorry. Let me email. I'm going to text one of our staff members, Deanie, who is really on the up and up with this, and get that for you hopefully before the end of this webinar. Apologies.
Deanie says it's Belmar, Oceanport, Pennington.
Deanie's on. Thank you, Deanie.
Yeah,
I can't see everybody because we have so many folks on. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And somebody also shared that Zoom has taken away the restriction of a 40-minute limit to your meetings.
Oh.
So you no longer have that problem. It'll just automatically extend when you hit that 40-minute. So thank you for that. I think it was Rosemary that shared that. Rosella shared that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank
you.
you.
That's the free plan on Zoom. No longer cuts you off after 40 minutes.
Yay, Zoom. Thank you.
Priya is asking us to identify priorities that ECs can come up with for local solutions to address. Absolutely, Priya. We will reach out to you individually to give you some ideas, okay? If you don't hear anything today, that might help you. But Again, to be safe, you have to be careful about what you're planting, especially indoors at the moment, but planting gardens, planting rain gardens, helping with community gardens, doing cleanups can all be done now pretty safely outdoors. So you limit the number of people, if you wear masks and you know, read the social distancing things, I think people are getting used to that. So
it seems we've got a clarification on Zoom. Thank you, Rosella. She says, it's not that it no longer cuts you off, but it asks you if you want to extend, and then it'll extend the time. So that's
thanks,
great.
Rosella.
Thank you. Do we have time for maybe one or two more, Liz? And then I want to make sure we've got plenty of time for Sophie and Dan.
Lou shared that the Cherry Hill Environmental Board has restarted its trail crew starting this Saturday with the governor's restrictions of 25 people with their own gloves, masks, and social distancing. So it is possible.
That's great.
And Lou has also asked about how you get film rights for Environmental Film Festival. And the answer is that ANJEC has purchased film rights to quite a few environmental films. So if you send us an email, Lou, I can tell you what films we have, and we can send you the DVD that you can then have a showing of. So, and that's available to anybody, any of our members, so which is all of you guys. So
yeah, the only condition there is that we need to make sure ANJEC is a co-host with you on it. So if, you know, we'll send you our logo, and if you include our name in the advertising, because we're the ones that purchase the rights, and so that'll get you free and clear of all the copyrights and the trademarks that go with the movies.
Steve is asking if the films can be streamed. I believe, Steve, that is individual to each film, but we can let you know. Mimi is asking, is it possible to provide the most current scientific support on whether or not COVID-19 is transmitted by reusable bags? We know a lot of you have been struggling with the fact that some stores in your municipalities are not letting people bring their own bags in. So, Jen, you want to take that on?
Yeah, Deanie is on as well too. And so we do have some up-to-date or some recent information that we can send out to folks, and maybe it's worth us doing a reposting via email or on Facebook. The issue is, I know there was a lot of fear, and the Food Council came out very strongly with a letter to each municipal body in March, saying that out of an abundance of precaution, because COVID is, I'm generalizing here, spread on surfaces, which is our understanding at that time, that it could potentially be spread on surfaces, that they were going to single use. And so that does not seem to be the case right now. So we can share, maybe it's by email blast is probably the best. We should get back with another plastics update, that information. I'm not a doctor, but our understanding is that really it is about good hygiene. And so it's about, you know, bring your own bag, pack your own bag, wash your own bag, wash your own hands. And that's a good practice. All right, so I want to move on, and we'll see if Deanie.
Wait, I got one more thing I want to,
okay.
Sorry, Priya is saying that the Trader Joe's in Millburn is preventing shoppers from bringing bags, and their ordinance in Millburn takes effect tomorrow. Please help. Priya, at least in my Trader Joe's, they don't let you bring your own bag in, but you don't have to take a bag from them. They can put the groceries right back in the cart, and you can pack it up in your car. So maybe that's a way to advertise the option.
Yeah, this seems to be a Trader Joe's company-wide policy, and that's been a challenge for us. I know that Target, Acme, Wegmans, Whole Foods, they've all been pretty good with letting you bring in your own reusable bag so long as you pack it. The other issue that we've consulted a transmission expert on is that the cashiers are already touching so many items in the store that an additional bag, it really it poses no additional risk is what they've said. But out of an abundance of precaution, we've said, look, just carry your own bag, pack your own bag, wash your own bag. Trader Joe's does seem to be an issue, and that's exactly what we've recommended to folks. Just have them put the goods right back in their cart and then pack them when you get to your trunk.
Thanks,
all right,
everybody.
I want to keep us somewhat on time here, and I'd like to turn it over to Sophie Glovier, who is joining us from her home. and she is the environmental chair, the environmental commission chair for Princeton University, Princeton Township, and also works with the Watershed Institute in Pennington. So thank you, Sophie, for joining us today.
Hi, well, can everybody see my screen? Can you give me a thumbs up? Excellent. Well, thank you, Jen and ANJEC, for all you do. I've been chair of the Environmental Commission for about 3 years now, and I'm just so grateful for the resources that you provide. And I love getting to talk to other ECs, so I'm really looking forward to learning from you all today. I'm having a little glitches with my streaming, so I hope that I'm gonna come to you with no problem, but here we go. So I just wanted to reference the fact that here in New Jersey, we have been in the middle of this pandemic. It's been a really intense time. We've had, more than 165,000 cases and 12,000 deaths. And at the same time now, as Jen referenced, we're also in the middle of a social justice, racism, police brutality, so many issues. So it's understandable that our municipalities have lots of things on their mind. But we really believe, of course, that there are environmental issues that are critical to everybody to address. And I received a call in late March from a member of our town council. And she said, hey, Sophie, the town is really going to be relooking at all of our priorities. And I think that you, as the Environmental Commission, should write a letter and raise everybody's awareness of why we should not step back on our environmental initiatives. So I did that. Here's a little screenshot. And what we tried to focus on was the fact that in many ways, the coronavirus is really raising awareness of the link between environmental health and our human health. And so many of the initiatives that we all are working on, including addressing climate change and water quality and air quality, really should become, even more priorities than they have been in the past. And so I think this was a helpful message to get out, and something for you all to consider. So moving from kind of the strategic to the logistical, I thought this cartoon kind of summed it up. There are just so many ways that there can be glitches with these online meetings. And as Jen said, my day job is working for the Watershed, and in that role, I attend a lot of virtual EC meetings. So I've seen quite a few of these, and I just wanted to pass on some lessons learned. So as best practice being demonstrated today by ANJEC, it is so helpful to have 2 people in charge. So if you're running the meeting, it is really hard to manage the technology at the same time. So if you can find somebody to do that for you, that is great. Remind that person to keep an eye on the waiting room. I've seen many instances of people joining the meeting late and getting kind of stuck in the waiting room, which is a really frustrating place to be, and monitor your chat box. Our Environmental Commission had a practice meeting before we went live, and it seems like such a long time ago, back in March, that none of us had any familiarity with Zoom. And I think that many people have had a steep learning curve and are very well versed in it now, but it was very helpful to us to have a practice meeting. It also can be helpful to admit your EC members before the public, just to make sure that you're organized before you're going to admit the public and start your meeting officially. And as Jen did, it's great at the beginning of every meeting to review with people how important it is for everybody to mute so you don't have a lot of distracting noise, how to comment, and make sure that your settings allow for public comment. I did go to one meeting where we were all muted kind of as a matter of course, and there was never, and the chat box wasn't enabled. So it was so frustrating to be at that meeting and not be able to make a comment. Not to mention that I think we're required to have the ability to have the public comment. So just a note to check that. There have been a lot of instances of Zoom bombing. I know it's happened in our town. And one of the strategies that we've adopted is that we don't post a link in Princeton. We print the Zoom address on the agenda, and people need to copy that and put it into the Zoom link themselves. And apparently that cuts down on Zoom bombing. I've seen other towns who are allowing their environmental commission to link in via Zoom. However, the public is instructed to watch the public TV cable channel. You can stream via that channel, and they have a call-in option. So that requires somebody to, to monitor the phone calls, but that's another way to have public comment if you are having a problem with Zoom bombing. And our attorney did inform us that it is legal to mute inappropriate comment, because that was a question that I had. I haven't had to do that yet, but it was nice to know that that was an option. We have been reviewing site development plan applications, as I know a lot of you have, and actually it's pretty wonderful because we've been asking to have these materials online for years. We've literally been handing around paper copies of plans among the Environmental Commission in advance of the meeting to review them. So it's wonderful that we can now do that. And we have had architects come to talk about their site development plans and other people, and just make sure you plan in advance for those to be able to share their screen. And lastly, I would say that it's so much easier to attend our Environmental Commission meetings now because people don't have to leave their homes. So I think it's really important to get that word out, and I feel as if our many mayors are sending a weekly update in this time, and I think it's getting pretty high readership. So a good place to highlight and invite your public to come in. Just a couple things quickly that we've been able to do. We did a virtual cleanup. Usually every year we do a stream cleanup in partnership with the watershed, and we couldn't do that this year. So we did a virtual cleanup, telling people to be 6 feet apart and wearing masks. And in addition to that, here's a graphic that Deanie Checo, I think, sent me originally. It had been designed in Union County, and they were nice enough to share it so that we could customize it. And I don't know about you all, but I mean, I'm seeing masks and gloves everywhere in the woods. And this went out in our mayor's letter, and hopefully we'll do something to make a difference. This is just a visual of the agenda for our May meeting. You can see that we're doing lots of things and as I mentioned, had a site development plan. And you can also see how the Zoom meeting link is listed here, but without a live click-through option. So what we're moving on, we are moving on a green building and environmental sustainability element we've been working on for years, and we were able to successfully advocate for that to be considered and we hope approved this month. And we are working on a lot of stormwater management. The town staff, I think, is in many ways maybe even more focused now that they're home. And as you all probably know, NJDEP has new green infrastructure rules that require each town to update their stormwater management ordinance before March of next year. Towns can go further than the basic NJDEP model ordinance. And so we are really urging our town to think about addressing redevelopment and minor development as well. So lots to do on that. And we're continuing, obviously, to review our site development plans. What is not moving for us is single-use plastics. And our council liaison came into the year with this as her #1 priority. And we were moving along with a great collaborative community education plan and involving businesses. And that is all ground to a halt because of severe concern with how our small businesses are really fighting for their lives and not wanting to layer one more thing on top of that. So we will keep pushing on that. But for right now, that has been a little bit, we're gonna have to just go back to planning and education for the time being. So I wanna leave time for questions and for Dan, so I will just leave it at that.
Great, thanks, Sophie. That was really wonderful. I appreciate the best management practices. I know we at ANJEC and through the multiple coalitions we've been on have learned those lessons the hard way in terms of asking everybody to mute and dim your screen or stop your video if you've got something distracting going on. And it's really inspiring to hear about all the work that you guys have been continuing to do and ways that this has actually helped you in reviewing plans. Liz, do we have questions in the chat that we should bring up?
Yes, indeed, Sophie. Claire is asking, what steps is Princeton taking in going beyond the stormwater basic ordinance and things others are doing? Their town wants to do more than just the minimum.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. We actually, 2 years ago, just to take a step back, the NJDEP new rules are very exciting because they are going to mandate the use of green infrastructure. However, they only address new major development. So I would say the most important thing that towns could look at would be to address minor development and to address redevelopment. The watershed is working with ANJEC and creating a model ordinance. So I hope that'll be done very shortly. And Jen, maybe we could work together to get that out. But that's a really important time to be working on this.
Absolutely. And just as a kind of programming preview, ANJEC is planning on a series of workshops that will start in the fall about that model ordinance. You know, we could potentially do it in August, but we thought, you know, some folks may want to try to get outside and take some vacation time. So in the fall, we'll start doing programming on that.
Wanted to know how you integrate your webpage into virtuality, Princeton?
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, you cut out just a bit. I didn't hear the question.
That's okay. Wanted to know how you integrate your webpage into virtuality in Princeton.
So we have had a web page. I wouldn't say it is the most amazing web page. We have to work within the town constraints. So I really think what's been most effective is to try and get our communications into the mayor's weekly email at this point. I think that's really our most effective strategy for getting the word out.
Awesome.
Terrific. A lot of people wanted to know, first of all, there were a lot of great compliments about some of your graphics, like the mask littering and now I lost it. But anyway, and also the letter that you wrote to the town and the green building element, if they could get copies of those drafts after the session that we could share with everybody, that would be great.
Sure, I will definitely do that. The GBSE draft is up on our municipal website, so we can provide a link to that and the letter, and yes, absolutely. And, you know, maybe Dinny could help us coordinate that, but I think that graphic generously has been offered for towns to grab, and if you've got a designer that can just click your label in, maybe that could be used by others too.
Great. Yeah. So if you send the letter to us, we can get it to participants. Liz, I think we've got time. We could do 1 or 2 more questions, and then I want to make sure we give Dan lots of time to chat.
Rosella is saying one of the Chatham initiatives is underground electric wires because of the impact overhead wires have on the tree cover. And the committee has suspended action because of the pandemic, and she's afraid that the pandemic is going to limit that progress. Underground wiring has not been an ANJEC initiative, but tree trimming activities, you know, affect the trees, etc. So she actually also says she loved the flyer with the mask cleanup, by the way. Everybody likes that one, Sophie.
Yeah, I would just say that the best thing to do there is open up the lines of communication and maybe ask your planner or your mayor if there are any plans to continue progress on that or what the plans are, knowing that the EC wants to be supportive of moving forward with that initiative. Certainly, the pandemic has affected just about everything. So, you know, I don't know what utilities would be engaged there, but they've had staffing restructure. They've had to restructure their staffing as well.
Right. Okay, that should do
All
it.
right.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So Dan
Thanks,
Bachalis, thank you, the chair of the Hammonton Environmental Commission. And in case you don't know, as designated by then candidate Reagan, Ronald Reagan, Hammonton is the blueberry capital of the world. So check out in another month or so as those blueberries start to populate our supermarkets, our farm markets, you'll see that a lot of them are from Hammonton, and they certainly make their way into just about everything I can imagine to put together in my kitchen, and then I save a bunch of them for the winter in the freezer. So thank you for being on deck to protect our water resources and the land in Hammonton. We certainly benefit from that work throughout New Jersey and really the country. So thanks, Dan, for joining us today. You should be able to share your screen if you'd like, and I'll turn it over to you.
All righty. Before I share the screen, Jen and Liz and all the people at ANJEC, and I know Cheryl Reardon is on with us today. I want to give a shout out to her. You've all been a great support to Hammonton. Very good partner, wonderful friends. We could not really do a lot of the things that we do without your support, without your ideas, without all the wonderful resources that you have available in terms of model ordinances, et cetera. I mean, you know, we just couldn't do it. So I want to thank you guys for being there and helping us along. I will share the screen
Thank you,
now.
Dan.
And oh, thank you. And let's see, here we go. Hit share.
Yep, we've got it. If you put it on the full full display, then we'll be able to see it a little better.
I just did the wrong thing. On the slideshow?
Yep, if you put it on slideshow.
Okay.
If I use the right words, that sometimes helps.
No, that's okay.
There we go. Perfect.
go.
Thank you.
So Hammonton is a small town in the Pines. Just a little bit about us. We have about 15,000 people. We are a Pine Barrens town. We're controlled in terms of development and related issues very tightly by the Pinelands Commission, as well as the New Jersey DEP. And frankly, we've had a love-hate relationship with them over the years, apparently. There's been some pushback to their limitation of development and the rules governing that. On the other hand, their rules have pushed us to think creatively about beneficial reuse of our wastewater, doing things a little better in terms of our development, adopting, or at least beginning to adopt, green infrastructure in town. We are, in terms of land use, we have a third of our actual municipalities taken up by Wharton State Forest. Another third is taken up by agriculture, and the other third by residential and commercial properties. We are the blueberry capital of the world, and Jen, we'll see that you make sure you get plenty of blueberries this season. They are coming up soon, and they are the best in the world. We have a mayor and council form of government, all elected for staggered 2-year terms on council and 4-year term for the mayor. As I say, it is a small town. There are lots of family and interfamily relationships. News travels fast here. So if you want the word to spread, you just tell a couple of people, and pretty soon people will be calling you up and asking you what's going on. In terms of their attitude toward environmental issues, it's a very conservative town. So there can be some pushback, but officially and in terms of getting things done, we've had a lot of great support from the citizens and the mayor and council, certainly, and from the town, other town officials. They've seen the benefit that working for the environment can bring to the town in terms of saving money and also having cleaner water, cleaner air, less congestion. So they've been very, very supportive. There are some issues where we're still working to turn opinions around, but I'm optimistic that we'll succeed eventually. In terms of the Environmental Commission, we were created in 1975. We meet the second Wednesday of each month. So in terms of the pandemic shutdown, we had just had our March meeting before the governor issued the orders to stay in. I'll talk a little bit more about missing meetings later. We do have 7 members with 2 additional alternates. The majority of us are over 60 years old, so we are in that sensitive population by and large. So we're looking at continuing our meetings via Zoom for the time being until everybody's reasonably safe. As a matter of fact, we have one of our commissioners who is ensconced in Utah for an extended vacation, if you will. So Zoom really helps us to maintain our quorum. We also function as a shade tree commission. So in addition to anything we want to do environmentally as an environmental commission, We also have additional duties to review tree removal applications and deal with various tree issues. As I said, we have a good relationship with the mayor and council. I was on council for a couple of years, but I was involved with the Green Committee here, the Green Team before that, and have stayed involved with those groups since then. The mayor is very supportive. A lot of the council members are very supportive. We have an active annual work plan. I'll show you that in a little bit. We also partner with the other environmentally related committees in town. We have a good relationship with the Public Works Department, who are, I will say, some of the hardest working people in our town. They have a lot of duties put on their shoulders, but they always find a way to make time to help us out when we need it. As opposed to maybe some other municipalities, we've had relatively little development that requires commission review of planning of the plans. We've had 1 or 2 a year, so it hasn't taken up a lot of our time. Certainly we would welcome some additional development, appropriate development in town where we could hone our skills in that. We've had ANJEC's wonderful training on that topic. So that's given us a little extra time to focus on other issues. There's our commission. Let's see, we've got, well, I won't point out who's old. You can pick that out yourself. This is our council liaison who attends our meetings. And if he doesn't attend our meetings, he certainly shares what's going on with council. And we provide feedback to him regarding what the Environmental Commission is doing. So we keep in touch. We make sure that everybody's informed. This is a quick look at the next 2 slides, a quick look at our work plan for 2020. 8 points. We added a lot of detail to make sure that we can give some direction for folks who are actually working on it. We've got our community forestry management plan, a pollinator garden that we've been unfortunately delayed on getting, making sure we stay in touch with the public. HOPE at the top of that, this slide is stands for Hammonton's Organized for a Positive Environment. And we coordinate activities with our Parks Commission, our Green Committees, our Lake Committee, our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and anybody else we can coordinate with on committees or in town civic organizations. We do have a public education campaign for plastic bags. That's been on hold a bit. Commissioner training has become a big thing for us. We want to make sure people are properly trained and stay up to date on things. So we annually try to make sure we get as much under our belt as possible. We are working on a new green buildings and sustainability element, as well as a historic preservation element, thanks to a very generous grant from Sustainable Jersey. So we're looking forward to seeing that happen. And we've got an open space review that's underway, although that is on hiatus also. This is a portion of our agenda for the meeting we had just last night. I did not include all of the tree reviews. There were 9 of them. Our meeting ran about 2 hours or so, just to kind of run through things. We did cut short some of the addressing items in the work plan for, well, because they're basically on hiatus. We have a few other items that were not included in the work plan itself. Down here, you'll see enforcement. That's enforcement of our tree ordinance, which we've done a little bit of. So it's a energetic agenda. We try to make sure we keep our nose to the grindstone to, well, do a couple of things. One, to try to get things done, but also to really, under these conditions, to fight off the feelings of, well, as you see here, stress, fear, and ennui, and not in the sense of being bored, but in the sense of what can I do? There's nothing I can do. I'm, you know, and then it leads to depression, that sort of thing. So in the early stages, when we were all very unsure about how we should address operations, of course, we had the idea that there should be no meetings, certainly no face-to-face meetings. But in talking with the mayor and council members about trying to do a Zoom meeting or whatever, the word was no meetings. Council, pardon me, I'm sorry. Council will have a meeting once a month. They did move it to the afternoon, which threw everybody off a little bit, but there would be no other meetings. So we postponed our activities, try to get our legs under us again. A lot of us were dealing with the stress, the fear, as I say, and we learned to cope with that by calling around, either phoning or FaceTiming or texting, emailing, to make sure that we were all functioning as well as we could individually, and that we had support from either other family members or certainly other members of the community, including ourselves. And of course, because we have email, texting, etc., maintaining contact with our partners in town hall, with our council members, other partners on other committees around town. So we dealt with that for 30 days or so. And then I would say a kind of a watershed event was we have a combined zoning board and planning board called the land use board. Well, come to find out that they were going to be meeting because they had some business they had to undertake. So during this particular period, people were becoming acclimated to being in lockdown, reaching out via phone, text, what have you. We heard there were some people doing socially distanced happy hours with the neighbors and that sort of thing on the front yard or in the, you know, on the patio, 8, 9, 12 feet apart. But once we heard the land use board was meeting, gave a call to the town hall staff and said, we'd like to have a meeting this month. And it was as if nothing was going on. I said, yeah, sure, we'll set it up for you. Easy peasy. Now, if they had balked at that, we would have been able to point to the fact that the land use board was meeting. Their meeting, we're supposed to be advisory to the land use board, even though we don't have any particular agenda items there, so we should be meeting. But we didn't have to do that because it was just, yeah, sure, you can meet. So we started. We had a meeting in May. We did miss the April meeting. We had a meeting in May. We had our second Zoom meeting last night. And with all of that, of course, it's not the only Zoom meeting that we're having. There are other Zoom meetings for other committees and other groups that are doing things. And we've had some subcommittee meetings via Zoom. So we're not masters of the universe yet, but we're starting to master the technology a little bit. And being exposed to Zoom, WebEx, GoToMeeting, and I think there's another one I think I've been to. You get to learn some of the strengths and weaknesses of each of the platforms. So in this phase, we've had not only the mastery of technology and continued or resumed meetings and discussion, both informal meetings and increased emails and texting and that sort of thing to move things along. We've also had a bit of a return of humor, mostly tied to our fumbling with the technology, which has been a good thing emotionally for everybody. We've also reactivated some of the pandemic compliant activities. We have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got a list up here, about 7 different grant possibilities that we're working on, either for the environmental, mostly for the Environmental Commission, some for some other related committees, but there's a lot of activity out there, a lot of opportunities. Fortunately, that activity can be handled via email, online applications, or just typing them up and sharing them via email, that sort of thing. phone calls with key people that you need to get questions answered from DEP or Department of Transportation, Sustainable Jersey, ANJEC. So we've been able to, during the, kind of this middle period, maintain and increase our contact with members and partners outside of meetings. As a matter of fact, one of our members said, Dan, we've been seeing a big uptick in our communication and activity after that initial depressed reaction to doing anything while we figured out what was going on. So I don't know if we're still in the middle stage or if we're in a new late stage, since we're talking about resuming outside activities, properly social distance. So people, by and large, have an increased confidence about how to handle themselves during this time period, whether they're staying home or whether they're venturing out a little more. People know how to do shopping, of course, by email, but also getting delivery services and that sort of thing, which has helped to relieve some of the stress on people. We also have a growing awareness about how to behave, wear the mask, stay 6 feet apart as much as you can. You know, who has been socially isolated and has not contracted the virus, and, you know, basically, you know, who do you need to watch out for? Again, it's a small town, so we're able to kind of get the skinny on what's going on there.
So Dan, we've got a couple questions.
Sure.
Are we at that point? I don't want to cut you off.
No, actually, we're planning for full resumption. We're maintaining Zoom meetings. We're going to be reactivating some indoor activities and some outdoor activities. Hopefully, we'll get some planting going on and some cleanups and other things. But we're really in this together. So, you know, plan for continuing support of each other, both for the organization's work and mission, but also for each other's emotional well-being. Without that, you're not going to get a lot done. But there are resources out there. Of course, the folks at ANJEC stand ready to support you all around. Jen, I don't know exactly how many members ANJEC has in terms of environmental commissions, but every environmental commission is also a support to you. So, you know, you can certainly feel free to reach out to us, and I'm sure you can reach out to your surrounding environmental commissions for support, for ideas, how to continue operating, and also just to vent maybe sometimes about what's going on right now.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that.
So,
Yeah, we do have several hundred, we've got more than 200 member commissions, you know, which is several thousand people. So we get a lot of information, and that's one of the things that we can do well, is to help share information between environmental commissions and connect people. Because I know as being a former chair of an environmental commission, it can feel like a lonely job, and it can feel isolating, but there are thousands of other people out there doing the same work as you.
Right.
So go ahead, Liz. What questions do we have?
Harry wanted to know, Dan, what's the difference between the Green Committee that you referred to and the Environmental Commission?
So the Environmental Commission was established by ordinance in, as I said, 75. And we quickly took on the duties of the Shade Tree Commission, which was abolished shortly thereafter. For a good while, that's basically what was the main focus of the commission. Although we've tried to recapture some of the broader environmental issues that we should be dealing with. The Green Committee was established in, let's see, 2007 or so, as a response to the Mayor's Committee on Climate Change, which ultimately led to the creation of Sustainable Jersey. Actually, a Stockton University student came to the mayor and said, "What are we doing about climate change?" And the mayor at the time said, "Well, you want to have a committee to work on this? And he said, yeah. So he appointed him, and he went out and threw a couple of people together, called it the Green Committee. It's a very, it's a mayor's committee, so it's not established by ordinance. It has always, since its inception, been a really nimble, very assertive, very active committee that puts on our Green Day Festival and has expanded that into a Green Weekend. They do a lot of cleanups. They run the community garden. They run an eye-opening film and lecture series for the town, a whole bunch of other things. So there's a lot of overlap between the Environmental Commission issues that we're working on. They're interested in a plastic bag ordinance as we are. They'll draft, they drafted an ordinance for a balloon ban. We drafted the plastic bag ordinance. So we share responsibilities for a lot of things. It actually gives us a chance to expand the number of people who are working on environmental issues, and in some cases double team our council about getting things done.
Terrific, great. Lyle wanted to know that she thought you said that the EC is involved in tree ordinance enforcement. If so, can you explain and give an example of how you guys are doing that?
Sure. Our tree protection ordinance in town requires people to get, if they want to remove a tree, if it's over 20 inches in diameter, no matter where it is on the property, they need a permit, which is free. And we did an analysis recently. In 2019, we approved some over 80% of those requests. So it's not, we don't feel it's a particularly onerous requirement to make sure we pay attention to our trees and tree canopies. If it's a street tree, no matter what you want to do to it, cut it down, trim it, what have you, you need a permit. If we find that people are cutting, subject trees without the required permit, I get calls from people all over town about this, and we go out, check it out, ask our code enforcement officer to pay the person a visit, and if he determines that the tree is indeed of the subject size or what have you, he issues a summons, and in most cases they get a rather hefty fine. We've increased that activity over the last year or so. People are paying a lot more attention to the condition and the health and well-being of our trees and our tree canopy. So that's basically
terrific
what we're doing.
Steve wanted to know, has Zoom increased community participation and attendance of your EC activity?
No, it has not. We honestly generally don't get much public participation at our meetings. Particularly if a person has a tree removal application in front of us, they may or may not attend, but they usually do not. And one thing that we have, we do make sure we include, as a matter of course, our a correspondent from our local newspaper, the Hammonton Gazette. So he's always sitting in on it, our council liaison. We were having a number of folks come in from the outside and make presentations about various issues, whether it's stormwater rules, the spotted lanternfly infestation that is now starting to plague Atlantic County, and other issues. We did stop that for the couple of months now, but at last night's meeting, we're going to make sure we resume that and try to make sure that people know that we are still meeting. We do have a Facebook page that people get notified about, but we probably need to do a better job letting people know we're still on the job. They know that through the Hammonton Gazette if they subscribe to it or if they pick up a copy, but we can always do a better job about getting the word out. But we don't generally get many people coming to our meetings anyway.
Thank you.
Sad to say.
Somebody wanted to know, do you have any Spanish language outreach to your Spanish residents?
That is a really, really good question. The short answer is some, not a lot. And we need to do a much better job at that. That's been a perennial issue for us. We really need to develop an ongoing resource for that outreach. We do have spotted lanternfly flyers in English and Spanish. And if we have a specific event that we're putting on, whether it's the annual lake cleanup, which we had to delay, it was going to be scheduled in March. We're looking at doing that in connection with the Green Day Festival this year in September. When we have a specific event like that, we make sure we put the word out in English and Spanish. But as an ongoing notice, as an ongoing thing, for instance, Facebook postings, postings on our town website, we need to do a much better job at that. But thanks for, bringing that up.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
So I want to keep this to, we said about an hour, so we're a little over 15 minutes from that. But I wanted to just share with everyone, there was a question early on in the hour of this webinar that, or a statement that an environmental commission was told by, I believe it was their governing body, that they couldn't have anything on their agenda other than site plan application review because the meetings were being held for emergency purposes only. Well, I went and pulled up the statement of explanation from the bill that passed enabling virtual meetings, and that number was earlier on in my presentation. It's A 3850. And the statement of explanation says, this bill explicitly authorizes a public body to conduct a meeting and public business, cause a meeting to be open to the public, vote, and receive public comment by means of communication or other electronic equipment during a state of emergency, public health emergency, or local disaster emergency. So that establishes the ability to meet. The bill also, I'm quoting again, the bill also allows a public body to provide notice of meetings electronically. So this is different, this is new. Usually you have to provide notice of meetings via the paper of record. But this bill, quote, also allows a public body to provide notice of meetings electronically through the internet during that time, meaning the emergency time, but requires that public bodies who exercise this option limit, to the extent practicable, the public business conducted at that meeting to matters necessary for the continuing operation of government, and that related to the applicable emergency declaration. So that to me means that there is advice here that if you are only noticing a meeting electronically, then you should try, to the extent that you can, to limit the items on your agenda to those only necessary to keep the functioning government going. So that may be the thing that they were referring to in trying to limit your agenda items. But the way I read this, again, I'm not an attorney, but the way I've been doing policy for a long time, the way I read this is that if you are noticing your meetings, both in the paper of record, again, easiest way to adhere to that is to keep with your original meeting schedule, and as kind of a bonus, noticing them electronically, then you're free to discuss any and all items of regular business that you would discuss in your meeting. And so that person who asked that question, feel free to follow up at the info at ANJEC, and I can give you that exact language. But I hope that helps. So we don't have any more time really for question and answers. I know we're all busy and we've got to jump to our next Zoom or GoTo meeting or Microsoft Teams or whatever we're headed to next. But I want to really, really thank Sophie and Dan for joining us today and sharing their experience during this very abnormal time, and for all of your leadership locally and your willingness to really reach out to others across the state and share. So thank you both.
Jen, can I forgot to share the trick about the Zoom 40-minute.
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry. Somebody else told me this because we were having a meeting and we were going to get cut off. And they told me what you can do is go back to the original Zoom link for your meeting and just click on that again, and it'll open it all up all over again. I thought we would
Great.
have to make a new link, but they said, no, just go back to the old link and open it up. If
Awesome.
Zoom does not extend your time. So
Awesome. I want to thank Liz Ritter for being here and helping us manage the IT and the chat room. I know we've got several ANJEC staff on here. I can't see them all at the moment, but thank you all for pitching in a real team effort, helping this happen, and for everything you're doing. And I do see that we've got Michelle Gaynor on. She's on ANJEC staff, and I want to wish her a very, very happy birthday today. So happy birthday, Michelle, and I'm sure everybody else on here wishes you happy birthday too. I would have said that earlier if I saw you, but I see you now. So I hope you have some cake and have some fun tonight. And thank you all for being here, and we'll continue to host these to share stories and try to help us all along in this new world that we're living in. So take care, stay safe, be well. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.